Have you ever really thought about ADHD medications? Drugs like Ritalin or Adderall? They're stimulants, the kind of thing you'd think would give you a jolt of energy. And yet, they're prescribed for a condition that we often associate with, well, hyperactivity. It seems like a complete contradiction, doesn't it? Well, today, we're going to untangle that exact puzzle and dive into the fascinating brain chemistry that makes it all make sense.
Right, let's just get straight to it. This is the big question. If someone is already, bouncing off the walls, why in the world would you give them a drug that's supposed to amp things up? It honestly feels like you're trying to put out a fire with gasoline. But the answer is incredible, and it tells us so much about what's really going on inside the brain.
So, to start unraveling this whole thing, we've got to look past the stereotypes. ADHD isn't just about hyperactivity. It's way more complex than that, and it's all rooted in something called our executive functions.
Think of your executive functions as the CEO of your brain. Seriously, they're all the high-level skills you need for planning, for organizing, for just getting stuff done. So when that CEO isn't quite on the job, it can affect pretty much every part of your life.
And yeah, this list right here really gets to the core of it. We're not just talking about someone who gets distracted easily. It's struggling to organize your thoughts, manage your time, and even keep your impulses and emotions in check. All of these things stem from those core executive functions we were just talking about. So if it's not about having too much energy, what is it? Well, one of the leading theories completely flips that idea on its head. Scientists now think it might actually be about having too little baseline activity in the brain. And here it is. It's called the low arousal theory. Now, when we say arousal here, let's be clear. We're not talking about being sleepy or tired. We're talking about the baseline level of electrical and chemical activity in your brain. And this theory suggests that for people with ADHD, that baseline is just set lower than normal. And here is the absolute key. If your brain is understimulated by default, what's it going to do? It's going to constantly seek out new things, new sounds, new distractions, anything to give itself a little jolt and wake itself up. From the outside, that looks like hyperactivity and distractibility. But on the inside, it's just a brain that's desperately trying to get the stimulation it needs.
So what's causing this low arousal state? Well, it seems to come down to one very specific and very important chemical messenger in our brains.
Dopamine. I'm sure you've heard of it. It's famous for being the pleasure chemical, right? It's tied to our sense of reward and motivation. But its job is way more complex than that. And to really understand ADHD, we need to look at two different ways it works.
Okay, this slide is super important. On the left, you've got tonic dopamine. The easiest way to think about this is like the water level in a bathtub. It's just the background level of dopamine that's always there. Then, on the right, you have phasic dopamine. This is like turning on the faucet for a quick burst. It's that sudden rush you get when something interesting or rewarding happens, like your phone buzzing with a new message.
Now, in a neurotypical brain, that background tonic level, the water in the tub, is pretty high. And because it's high, the brain is kind of satisfied. It's basically saying, hey, we're good, we've got plenty of dopamine. So when a little distraction pops up, the phasic burst, the faucet, is pretty small. That distraction isn't super rewarding, so it's easy to ignore.
But in a brain with ADHD, it's the total opposite. The background tonic level is low. The bathtub is half empty. So when that same little distraction comes along, the brain goes, ooh, stimulation, and releases a huge phasic burst to compensate. That little distraction suddenly feels intensely rewarding and interesting, making it almost impossible to ignore. That's the chemical reason for that constant search for stimulation.
So, if the problem is a low water level of dopamine, how do you fix it? Well, you've got to find a way to raise that level, right? And that is precisely what stimulant medications are designed to do.
And they do it in a couple of different ways. The first group, like Ritalin, basically acts like a drain plug. It stops your brain's cleanup crew from vacuuming up the dopamine after it's been used, so more of it just sticks around. The other group, like Adderall, is a bit more direct. It just tells the neurons to turn on the faucet and release more dopamine in the first place. But either way, the end goal is exactly the same. Get that baseline level of dopamine up. And this slide puts it all together beautifully. First, the stimulant raises that background tonic dopamine. The water level in the tub goes up. Second, with that higher baseline, those little distractions don't trigger such a huge phasic burst anymore. They become less rewarding. And third, with less of a chemical reason to seek out new things, the brain's overall arousal level starts to normalize. That constant, frantic search for stimulation finally quiets down, and the ability to focus goes way up. And just like that, our paradox is solved.
Okay, so that explains why these drugs work for people with ADHD. But it brings up another huge question, right? What happens when people without ADHD take them as study drugs or to try and get a cognitive edge?
Well, this might actually surprise you. Despite this reputation as smart drugs, a lot of studies have found that for people who don't have ADHD, these medications offer very little, if any, real cognitive benefit. In some cases, people only did better on tests when they thought they got the drug, even if they didn't. That's a classic placebo effect. You might feel more focused, but that feeling doesn't actually mean you're performing any better.
And look, this isn't some harmless little experiment. Taking these powerful medications when they're not prescribed for you comes with some very real, very serious dangers. Addiction is a massive concern, not to mention all the other nasty side effects, from insomnia all the way up to severe heart problems.
So we end with this thought. Stimulants work for ADHD because they are fixing a very specific chemical imbalance. They're bringing an under-aroused system back up to a normal baseline. But for a brain that's already operating at that baseline, the benefits are questionable at best, and the risks are not. So you have to ask, is the feeling of being more focused really worth that kind of gamble?